everyone, welcome to Aisha's Med Corner. This is part 2 of our content review series. So in this video, I'll talk more about the general strategy and I will give you a sample weekly schedule that you could follow. So if that sounds like a good idea to you, then please keep on watching. Before we begin, I want you to click the subscribe button for pre-med strategy, mental health, and lifestyle videos. I also have conversations with super successful people in the STEM field. Just recently, I had a conversation with Wahida, who is a clinical project manager in Sweden. So click the subscribe button, every little like counts. I am a new YouTuber and I really do appreciate your support. So let's just begin. Now, we're gonna start with the general strategy that I adopted when I was studying my MCAT. Now, I took the MCAT in 2018, I took it in 2019, and that's because I didn't get a high enough CAR score. But I also studied for the MCAT in 2017, and I only studied a month, and I thought that I wasn't mentally prepared, so I postponed it for 1 year. So over these 3 years, I really learned little tips and tricks that I would love to pass on to you. Now, if you haven't watched my video, I did a video on my honest review of Princeton Review MCAT prep course. So if you're thinking about buying a $2,000 prep course, watch that first, because I do ask you 2 questions that you can ask yourself to really determine if you really do need it. Now, the general strategy. So now that you signed up for the MCAT, you know your date, it's maybe 3-4 months away. The first thing I would love for you to do is to take a diagnostic test. Now, this can be from any company. I myself took a diagnostic test from Princeton Review, and they probably have it free on their website. You can try Kaplan, you can try pretty much any prep company, but always have realistic expectations around the diagnostic test. And almost everybody scores very low in the beginning. And in my opinion, prep companies make diagnostic tests extremely difficult so that students see their score and they are more compelled to buy their products. So when I took it, I got a very low score. And it wasn't as low as I expected, because everybody on a Reddit community was like, okay, even if you get a 498 or something like that, don't get discouraged. This is only to see where your strengths lie and where your weaknesses lie. My diagnostic test was a 502. But again, I was aiming much higher than that. Even though 502 is above average, it's above 50th percentile, but I scored abysmally in chemistry, physics, and I did pretty well in psychology. Now, don't get discouraged. Again, in your practice stage, in your content review stage, it doesn't matter how many things you get wrong or right, as long as you know what mistakes you're making and you're learning from those mistakes so that you don't make the same mistakes on your test day. So even if you get a low score, that's fine. But now I want you to really assess which section was your highest and which one was your lowest. The one with the lowest score, you need to know that this is the section that you want to spend more time on, and you need to really come up with a strategy that you can use to really improve that score. So for example, let's say your lower score was chemistry, physics. Now, you can think, okay, I did pretty well in my undergrad class. Why am I getting such a low score in chemistry, physics? Is it the calculations that I need to do in that time constraint? So maybe I can do more practice questions under time conditions to really improve on that. Or perhaps the psychology, sociology is your lowest score, and maybe because you haven't taken those classes in your undergrad, so your main goal should be, okay, maybe I should focus on reading the Khan Academy 300-page document that I mentioned in my last video, and you can think about, maybe I need to go over that and really focus on all the terms that they mentioned. And also the diagnostic test is a great way to really get a sense of how long the test is going to be, and try to do it in test conditions as possible. So, turn off your phone, do it in a quiet space where nobody can disturb you, maybe your school library. Maybe do it on a desktop, because the real MCAT is not going to be administered through your laptops, and so you get a real sense of how the test will be. And honestly, before the MCAT, I didn't know how it was possible to study or to take the test that lasts 7 hours. Like, that was intense, but it was a good experience, and the practice test helped me really get used to the length and the duration, and it does require stamina, mental stamina as well as physical, and you try to build that up through full-length practice tasks. Now, like I said, any company would suffice. I tried Princeton Review, you can try Kaplan. That's not the point. The point is you need to know how the test is, and you also need to know what your strengths and weaknesses are, so that you can plan ahead and see how your study schedule will look like. Now, how should you process the information? Now, should you read the textbook passively? I'm pretty sure most of you know that's not a good idea. And that's what I was mostly doing in 2017. I never took the test in 2017, but I've soon realized that active practice is so much more useful than just sitting down and memorizing everything on the textbook, because that's not what the MCAT is about. MCAT is about having that foundational concept or knowledge base, and then using that in novel situations. So you need to do a lot of practice questions to basically come up with a system to answer those questions. So reflect on what worked for you in the past, and use your learning style to your advantage. So for example, I'll give you my example. I'm an auditory learner. I love listening to lectures, I love listening to podcasts, and I love listening to myself. I'm kidding. But seriously, what I did was, let's say I studied a chapter on metabolism, and I wrote like whatever I did, and then I would make like some kind of like a cheat sheet with the main points like that I need to remember for the test date, and I would record myself using my phone's recorder, and I would then re-listen to my own lectures on the bus, when I was doing chores, and it really helped solidify that knowledge base in me. Now, not everyone is a auditory learner, I get it. So maybe you are a visual learner, so in terms of metabolism, perhaps you can draw out the pathways on a big chart paper and really understand where everything is happening. So again, or if you're a kinesthetic learner, if you like associate movement, a lot of people exercise or they're on the treadmill and they also study at the same time, so you can incorporate movement with the study material. But reflect on your undergrad classes and see, okay, in this class I did really well. What was I doing? Was I writing notes? Was I watching a particular YouTube channel? Whatever, reflect. You need to really come up with a personalized study strategy that works for you. So think about your learning style, think about what you are strong in and what you're weak in, and then allocate time accordingly. Now, of course, for me, writing down notes, like pretty little notes, was very time consuming, and I gave up that strategy a long time ago. I was like, I cannot spend so much time trying to write things down, make it look pretty. So I didn't do that. What I did instead was I read the content, so the prep books, and then I would make, like, I wouldn't write anything down, but I would just make Anki cards right away. So let's say I'm reading a paragraph and it says, what is X? How is it done? I don't know, just anything. I would right away make the Anki card, and there's pre-med decks out there. I'll talk more about Anki a bit afterwards, or Anki, I don't know how you pronounce it, but I would basically frame the top as a question. I would kind of think to myself, like, how would test makers use this concept and test us? they can ask what questions, why questions, whatever, and then I will put it down right away. So I don't need to read, write notes, and then make flashcards. I just made flashcards directly, and that worked for me because writing down was just too passive and too time consuming. Again, know yourself. Maybe writing it down helps. For me, it really didn't. Like I mentioned in my previously about Anki, and there's so many videos out there about Anki. I'm not gonna repeat because I'm pretty sure you've already read about it or have listened about it. It's very popular among medical students and pre-med students, but the basis is spaced repetition. So what happens is newly introduced and more difficult cards are shown more frequently, and the older ones and the easier ones are shown less at less frequent intervals, and you know, it's just, it helps stick the answer more. Sometimes I would do a cram session. That means that I would go through all the questions in my deck just before a full length or something. So you can do that too. And what is my opinion on pre-made cards? I don't know. What is it? Let's see. I didn't use them at all because personally the act of making flashcards is so key. It helped me understand the material more. And again, some people might hold a different opinion, especially if you're in med school. I don't know about that, but I'm just talking about the MCAT specifically. Making the cards helped me a lot more, and pre-made cards, they're not really personalized to me, and so why not make cards myself and only write the things that I need to remember. Again, you can still use them. There's a lot available. After reading the textbook and making the flashcards, I would watch YouTube videos. And in my last video, I talked about the playlist and the videos that really helped me. And I don't recommend anything unless it's amazing for me. So I recommended the Organic Chemistry Tutor and three other ones. But again, watch that video. So any clarification, any questions that I had, I would watch it right away. Again, make Anki cards or Anki cards also of that. If there was something that I'm like, damn, I need to know this. And then do practice questions. So practice questions can come from the end of your book. So Kaplan has more practice questions than Princeton. You can also, the thing is, a lot of people say do UWorld right away. I haven't talked UWorld in these videos at all, but in my opinion, I was only comfortable to do UWorld once I had about 80 to 90% grasp of the content, and then I did UWorld. So it's up to you. You can do UWorld right away, but I personally saved it until the second phase of my MCAT prep. In my first phase, all I did was practice questions from the book, as well as any online questions that I found or on Khan Academy. But when you're doing practice questions, don't look at the mark. Like, don't be like, oh my god, I got 2 out of 5. Oh my god, I got 0 out of 5. I had those days where I answered everything wrong. I had some days where I had everything right. So it was very up and down, but that's not the point of practice questions. It's not like you need to get hundreds in every practice session. What matters is you learn from your mistakes. So let's say you have a practice question, read it, like when you're reviewing it, read the questions them very carefully, go through each of the choices and see why one option is right over the others, and make sure you really understand it. And if there was a question that you got right, but it was based purely on guess, that's the most dangerous kind of question, let me tell you, because it gives you a false sense of security, and we will think like, oh, I got this right, so whatever. No, what if you get the same question right and you make the wrong guess on test day? So pay attention to the questions that you guessed but got right, because they should not give you a false sense of security. So always kind of think back and think, oh, I got that right because I knew the foundational concepts behind this question stem, or I got this right because I basically picked B out of pure guess. So really understand why you made that mistake. Now, I also made, like I said, flashcards while reading the book. And since I'm an auditory learner, I actually added a audio to the cards. And I don't know why, it just really helped. And there is an add-on that you can add to Anki. I can link it down below, and it automatically adds audio to the cards. And I loved it so much because, again, just hearing it made everything made so much more sense. Now, cars. I have made 2 videos on it already. I personally went from 48th percentile to 90th percentile on my second try. And cars is unlike any science section because it does not require you to have a knowledge base. Everything that needs to be answered is found on the passage. And it sounds easy, but it makes students' life more difficult because then they don't know how to prepare for cars. And I talked about my strategy in this video, and I also talked about the resources, detailed review of all the resources I use in this video. But make sure you practice cars every single day, every single study day. And it's a bit different, so you need to, it's almost like you're exercising every day. You're basically building muscle, and as you exercise more and more, it becomes easier and easier. So do 2 passages, 1 to 2 passages per day. I'm telling you, you think it's 2 passages, but it will actually take you some time to review it properly. You can do 100 passages, but that really doesn't matter if you don't think about why you are doing what you're doing. Reflection is so important. No one's gonna take your hand and guide you through the MCAT prep. You need to be your own teacher. So be honest with yourself. It's okay if you're doing shitty right now. Just try to have a growth mindset and really think, how can I improve this performance? Am I doing everything I can in my power to really improve it? Am I doing something wrong? And have that humility to really say, okay, you're not doing this right. You need to really improve your strategy. And that happened to me so many times. I did so many wrong things, but I had to really be honest with myself first and foremost. So for the cars, build up your habit and ramp it up as you get closer to the test date. So perhaps you can start one passage a day. Then you can, after a few days, like 15 days, you can do 2 passage. After another 10 days, you can do 3 passage, and then 4 passage, and then to the point that you're actually doing a full section per day. And again, it's a gradual build-up. You're not gonna go all 100% first day because you'll just burn out. Now, AAMC material, I've never really mentioned it. So when I think of MCAT prep, I think about it in 3 distinct phases. The first phase is the content review. Like I said, read the textbook, watch the YouTube video, flashcards, practice question. The second one is where you are about 80% done of that phase and you're moving on to more practice questions from UWorld. Like, that's what I did. And UWorld itself is content review, and I'll tell you why in my next video. But you do UWorld questions, you do more full lengths, and again, content review doesn't really end. You're gonna continually learn more and more things, but you're gonna move away from the textbooks once you move from phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 3 is purely AAMC material. You need to get used to that, right? Now, there's a lot of AAMC material, and one mistake that I did personally on my first try is that I started some of the AAMC review stuff too late, to the point that I didn't have time to finish all of it. And that's really unfortunate, because you need to make sure you go through as much AAMC material as possible, because they're the test writers and you need to understand what their style of questioning is. So I'm looking at all the AAMC material that is present or available, and make sure you try to do as much as possible. And sometimes it's like, it's a bit hard to do, but you know. Other phase, question packs. Now this is a good tip, so write this down. Question packs are questions that have been released from the old MCAT, so this is not from the new MCAT, and these are generally easier and they are shorter passages. So one thing I wish I did was use question packs earlier in my prep, so I went through them. And one great thing you can do is during phase 1, when you're doing textbook materials, you do some questions from question pack. Definitely, if I could go back in time, I would do this much earlier because it's a bit easier. The CARS question pack. Okay, I got a story to tell you guys. The first time I studied for the MCAT, the question pack, I did all of it. There's a lot of passages in one sitting. And after I was like done with the question pack, I was so tired, and I did it near the end of my prep. So like my test was very soon, so I couldn't really derive much benefit from that. And so I'm telling you, CARS question pack, do it in phase 2, which is like a month, or you can even start in the beginning. But the main thing is you need to do question pack little by little. So you know how I said you do 1 or 2 passages per week, per day, and slowly build up the habit? So once you've gone through all the third-party CARS materials, such as Jack Weston, Khan Academy, Princeton Review Prep Book, use these CARS passages, but make sure you do them in time condition. You do them very little by little, so 1 to 2 passages in one sitting. And a lot of students actually do the CARS question pack more than once. And so if you do a little by little in the beginning, you can do it again when maybe you can make it into a 1-section test and do 9 passages at once. In terms of I'm trying to understand very dense material, what I did was I made a cheat sheet, such as, let's say I mentioned metabolism. You need to know glycolysis, gluconeogenesis, all that stuff. What I used to do is get a blank piece of paper, non-lined, and I would make flow charts and kind of summarize what I need to know. And then I would make audio notes, like I said. So I'll make cheat sheets and then try to do it in a way that you're teaching someone else. So, schedule. Should I make a part 3? Because this is already a pretty long video. I will make a part 3. So if you like this video so far, please give a thumbs up. Comment below your questions. I will answer them. I really want you to succeed, and I know that when I was writing the MCAT, I always watch YouTube videos because they're so helpful, and just finding guidance is so key, right? I think everyone can score really well, and you can score your personal best, and that's all that matters. So, you know, if you like this, please give it a thumbs up, comment below, follow me on Instagram. I make exclusive posts, I make infographics, and my DMs are always open if you need any help. Till then, goodbye.